ladies and gentlemen of all ages, boys and girls. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Angry Meat Production. We appreciate you coming in and letting us be a part of your lives week in and week out. We hope to do our best to present you with something that your eardrums delight in. Whether you're looking at us on YouTube or Rumble, or listening to us on Spotify, Google, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast services that we are currently on or trying to get on. We thank you. And if you don't mind, at the end of every episode, stop by, leave us a comment, leave us a like. If it asks for 5 stars, we'll take 5 stars, even if you don't like us. 5 stars are what it's all about. With that being said, we hope you enjoy our attempt to make our advocation our vocation. Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Welcome, Angry Faithful. We got BC Sanders of the Disruptor podcast on here again, and we're going to talk about gangs. I don't know. Is this going to be another long one like it was last time?
No. I got a hard line of 1 hour and 17 minutes and 32 seconds. So I will have to cut it off then. I can always come back on and talk longer, but yeah, today we got to keep it to about an hour, man. We'll be good. Because I think we did 3 hours last time.
We did 4.
And or we did 4. Nobody wants to hear me talk for 4 hours.
I don't know. There's people that actually like that.
I don't even think we got to gangs or anything like that. I don't even know.
We did a little bit on gangs, and we just didn't. And hand to God, I hope this doesn't happen like it did last time. Last time I talked to you, after we got done, I went to go get another pack of cigarettes, and it's like 7-Eleven's like walking distance. Just to give you a verification of how close it is. There was a raid on a house, and I'm talking. There was apparently this guy was I don't think he fired on officers. I think he was just firing. He was a murder suspect, and he had crept underneath the house, and there was like smoke bombs. And this is while we were talking.
Oh wow!
And I'm surprised I didn't hear it. I mean, your line of work, you it's probably like, oh, that's a Tuesday for me. What are you talking about? But I was like, I was like, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, it's amazing what goes on in society that we don't hear or know about, and then when we don't, how good we feel about life.
Yeah,
it's only until we have to watch it on the news or social media or in your neighborhood that you realize, it's right outside my door, man.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, but it's also it's you want to keep up prep and everything. I mean, I talked to this guy. His girlfriend was just recently accosted. We'll say that. And I talked to him. I was like, "Oh, do you need, you need like a weapon or something like that?" He's like, "Nah, I got knives." I'm like, "What?"
Right.
Yeah, I'm a great knife thrower. I can throw knives pretty good. I'm like, what? Oh, and
right.
It was literally like copacetic, I guess that was the word, that I watched this video of a little fat kid going, "I know knives," and he's like running as fast as he can, trying to keep his pants pulled up at the same time. I'm like, he died like 14 times just watching this.
Well, I can tell you, man, I got a little fear of knives, man. Edged weapons are no joke. Only because you don't have to reload them, and if somebody is halfway motivated or angry enough, whatever, man, they can do some serious damage. Either way, I don't want to have to get in a gunfight or a knife fight, man.
Yeah.
Either way, like people think it's that everyone's out there. Oh, I can't wait to get in a shootout. It's like no. Like I'm trying to avoid that on a daily basis.
So we were actually talking, and we conversate every once in a while. But you were talking about how you were setting up a special unit for gangs in your area because they were actually using like hotels and hotspots, which hotspots I understand, but you had to explain the hotels again for everybody else because
Okay.
I when you said hotels, it's like what, like
Yeah.
outside of them, and you
Yeah.
clarified it. But go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, this was several years ago that we really started seeing what used to be what you hear the term open air drug market, or a corner or a location where people actually stand around and someone will pull up or they'll walk up and they'll buy drugs, right? That's has been going on since probably 30, 40 years in the area we work in, or that I work in. So what we were starting to see was a transition where we were hammering these areas. So every dealer, you see them standing out there, you do surveillance every day, you pick them off one at a time, and you focus on that arrest that day, and you watch them make 7 to 10 sales that day. You stop the customers walking away, recover the drugs. Then later that day, you charge them with multiple felonies. Oftentimes, these areas, these hot spots, at least in our area, were near schools or city parks, that sort of thing. If they're within a certain distance of a school, that's an additional charge. So we had hammered these corners and these hot spots, as we refer to them. But also, what we were learning is that a lot of the gangs, mostly blood sets, different factions, and then Crip sets, had started utilizing our hotels in the city. And what I mean is, you have so many hotels in any city in the U.S., but not all the hotels are large and luxurious. Some of them are smaller, maybe owned by a family or a smaller franchise, and then they're charging, say, anywhere between $30 to $60 a night for a room. So what these gang members started realizing is they can't stay on the corners, they can't stay in certain areas that we've hammered them on. So now they transition into hotels, right? And how it works is, because of modern technology, a gang member can have 3 or 4 smartphones, and they literally can have their burner phone where customers are monitoring them and they're saying, "Hey, I re-up, I'm good. Hit me up at whatever, fill in the blank, Hotel A. I'll be at Hotel A, room whatever 227." You know what I mean? And now they might blast a text out to their customer base, and then the customers will actually go to the hotel and buy from them in the same manner they were doing, 10 blocks down the street near a city park or near a schoolyard or something. But the reason when they start using the hotels, it has to be profitable. So what a gang member would do is go in, read the room, so to speak. They go in and look at a clerk, size up the clerk, and maybe that clerk's on the up and up. So then they'll come back on a night shift. And then they go, "Oh, this dude right here, he's got a little edge to him, maybe." You know what I mean? So they might drop a hint about weed, or they might drop a hint about coke or Molly or heroin, any of these drugs, or they may say something about tricks like prostitutes. So they may say, basically like, "I'm running 3 girls. One of these girls will come turn a trick for you if you'll give me access to a room tonight." So when they find some type of vice or some type of thing that a clerk is into, they basically build rapport, offer that to them, and then the clerk may go, "Okay, cool. I'm here all night. You got access to room 227. Just know that if I have to, I got to bump you out of there, but more than likely you got it. The room is yours." And then, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock, some lady comes in there, that clerk goes in the back room, they turn a trick, he comes back up, he's happy, and the gang member now is straight profit. He's not having to pay anything for that room. So the longer this goes on, the more he's getting access to free hotel rooms. Right? You see what I'm saying?
No,
So yeah, so what they learned was that they could start to operate out of hotels and not be out on the street. And so it was twice as hard for drug units to actually come in and do the same things they had been doing. So now you basically have to set up, do long-term surveillance, or if you're really good, you flip gang members within that certain set that's operating in a hotel, and flip them into informants, and then they will actually tell you what hotels their fellow gang members are working out of. And so then you can actually go after The hotel, you can go after the staffing, you can go after the gang members, you can pick off their clientele, you can make the parking lot so hot they have to move to another location. What I mean by hot is you go in and make a lot of arrests for people trespassing and loitering on the property. If you're seeing, certain violations, and hotel management or upper management said, hey, I don't like that 20 guys hang out in the back parking lot. None of them have room keys. None of them stay here. I want them all trespassed. Or there's trespassing posted and they're sitting there, drinking, smashing bottles in the parking lot, firing guns off, being stupid. And then a team can come in and make multiple arrests. And then the word starts getting out. If you hang out in this parking lot, this hotel, you're going to get scooped up or arrested for trespassing. They're going to check for warrants, that sort of thing. And the more police presence, a lot of time in a hotel, the less criminals are going to want to operate out of that hotel. But they were becoming masters of flipping the staff, be it a clerk, sometimes a manager, like middle management that comes in and they are hiring the clerks, they're hiring the cleaning staff. That manager may have a cousin or something in a blood set, or a Crip set. And then they hook them up. So they're like, okay, cool. I'm the manager at this hotel. You give me a cut of whatever you're selling or girls you're turning tricks, and I'll let you get access to some rooms here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another question I was going to ask is when you get like the informants and everything, how do you because the thing I'm thinking, this is just me thinking, are a lot of those informants wanting to be like higher up in the gangs, and that's the reason why they're snitching, or they just do the the usual, hey, I'm trying to get out of this charge, I'm going to give you some information.
Every gang member is different. Their motive for joining the gang is different. I say all of them are different, but there's several categories, but basically not every gang member operates the same, right? So they have different intrinsic motivation to join that gang and stay in the gang. Same thing when they decide they're going to flip or cooperate. So I may watch, we'll keep it simple, 10 gang members that are all part of one set. So that could be 8 trade Crips, that could be rolling 60 neighborhood Crips, that could be 9 trade blood, G Shine blood, sex, money, murder blood, any of the different Piru blocks. Like in our area, we have a multitude of Bloods, Crips, Sureños. So you've got a lot of different groups operating. Gangster Disciples, Latin Kings, Vice Lords. So they're operating based out of Chicago originally. Bloods and Crips originally out of LA, but then we also have East Coast Bloods that operated and created their own nation in New York in 1993, and it has spread ever since then. So we just got a lot of stuff going on down here. So whenever I'm observing different sets or different gangs or whatever, we'll keep it simple. Let's say there are 10 gang members and we'll say they're Bloods, right? So I'm watching them and I go, okay, the highest ranking guy in that group is the most violent. And that guy wants nothing more than to put every other set in the city in the ground. So all he wants to do is push violence. Now, he may have 9 other subordinates in that gang who operate differently. And maybe 2 of them, I've watched them grow up, right? Maybe I know their cousins, maybe I know their grandmother. So I know a little bit more about them. And I know that for the most part, maybe they're actually not that violent. They're definitely not as violent as their leader. However, they may commit violence for the furtherance of the gang. But they also may want out of that gang. But because their leader is so violent that they fear retribution if they don't go to a meeting, if they don't pay their dues, because they have to pay monthly dues, it's basically like now they've joined what is a gang, but also the mindset of sort of like a cult. If you look at the conditioning and you have to memorize certain codes of conduct and you have to know all the signs and symbols, you have to know the codes, the lingo, I mean, so the coded language they may use, you have to know the rank structure, and it's just a constant conditioning. So now those guys maybe after 3 or 4 years realize our big homie or our superior is actually a really, really violent guy. And they've watched him commit violence against other gang members in their set, against rivals, maybe against his own girlfriend or baby mama or something.
Yeah.
So those two guys may want out of that set. They just don't know how to get out of it. And they also may be broke, right? So I may approach them in a very soft way. Like I just walk up to them one day. We talk about me watching them when they were kids playing basketball in some neighborhood or something. We build rapport. And then I lay it out there. Hey, look, this is the deal. I'm part of a unit right now that we don't dress like cops. We don't dress like DTs or detectives. You know, we're not rolling around in suits. We're in regular clothes like this. And our only job is to prevent violence or to help shut down a hotel where violence is occurring. And then I may say, you are part of, and I'm just picking a set. This is not an exact example of any kind of case I've worked, but I may say, you are, 9 tray blood. And I'm gonna explain to you, that I know you're 9 tray blood, which is also an alias term for your set is Billy Badass. So I know you're Billy. I know you've been Billy since day one. And really that means you've been in the set for 3 years and you're holding the 3-star rank and their eyes are getting very, very big. You know what I mean? Because I'm laying all this out.
Yeah.
And then I say, and I'm telling you all this because I'm offering you a way to actually save yourself from your future. You're in a day-to-day survival mode. Every day you're worrying about getting shot or killed. You're worried about your own house getting shot up. You're worried about your own big homie. And then I'll throw out that person's name, their rank, how long they've been in the set, some of the violence they've been involved in. And you're worried about all of this and you just can't stop or slow yourself down to create an exit strategy. And you've never once slowed down and thought that there were other units in local police departments or federal agencies that are doing nothing but working your entire set because of all the level of violence and the plots of future violence that y'all have going on. And you just have a normal conversation like that. And so for a lot of gang members, they realize they can get out or potentially want out of an organization like that, and that they can then voluntarily sign up and work as potentially an informant, right, or a source. So sometimes they just need kind of like that golden ticket, you know what I mean? Like for someone to come along and explain it to them. Oftentimes gang members realize they are told and conditioned that police are stupid and that our departments and agencies know nothing about this secret society, this criminal organization. And the more codes they have and secret lingo and symbols and hand signs, and the more they can do that, the more they can kind of package their gang. And then once the person joins, they realize, oh, well, these cops don't know our hand signs. They don't know what it means when I say I got the 5 or I got the 4. They don't know what our rank is. They don't know what our alias for the set is. So when I say, I be that Billy Badass, other people will be like, what are they talking about? Like, so they're being told at every turn that it's secret. We don't know these things. We don't know their lingo. They're also being told that everything, the whole world is against them for certain sets. So if we're talking about like some of the blood sets and some of the Crip sets, they can sometimes be told that the government's against you, school systems are against you. You're if you've got a job, your boss isn't going to pay you what you're worth. Like at every turn, it's sometimes being told by your superiors that it's you, like it's a universal. It's you in I versus all. We're universal. So it's like this way of saying, if you're part of our family, you're part of our set, we're strong. You know what I mean? Like more numbers, we're stronger. And it's us versus everybody. It's us versus every other gang. It's us versus the government. It's us versus your boss, maybe your parents, your family members. Like, so there's this, it begins to kind of tighten that social circle they may run in. So what ends up happening is, that's why I was saying, it's almost like more conditioning someone. So if you study like cults and how people end up joining cults or how they're seeking something, they're looking for something, and then they join a gang, and then all their things they're looking for gets fulfilled. It takes them sometimes years to figure out. For the most part, they're being used by the upper management, by the upper supervisors.
Yeah,
And so once they,
I was sorry.
Mhm.
I was that was one thing. It's like when I was talk about cults and everything. The main factor of cults that you see is what they psychologists say is mirror effect, and
Mhm.
a lot of them is like they start doing like mirror effects to where like FPI do it for negotiations. They do like the last three words usually, or last part of the sentence to get that rapport.
Mhm.
And it's I haven't seen it work, but
Mhm.
from what I gather, it's strange that we can be controlled that easily.
Yeah, I would say I don't use techniques like that. I would say that the rapport building definitely. But if you and I are talking and you say something to me like, but I hate this set. I just want to get out. And then I say, well, if I understand you right, you're telling me you want out. Like for real, you want out of the set. Now I may say back to you what you said. I'm not doing it to manipulate you or try to get you to think a certain way. I do it so that I'm firm in what I understand you to say. And then if someone you're talking to, it also allows them to relax a little bit and to understand, oh, this guy is a cop, but he's listening to everything I'm saying, and what I'm saying he understands fully. So I do that as well, but I don't really do any kind of
Okay.
techniques like that. I think I know what you're talking about, but in my line of work, people have often asked me like, well, how is it that people want to work as informants? Like you're manipulating them, and there are other techniques that people use. I don't do any of that. I like to explain to gang members what their life is like and what their situation is like. And if I can show that I have all this knowledge about the gang, it helps them understand that they are in a losing battle, that their is not as strong as they think it is, and that their superiors have been lying to them because they have. Their superiors will tell them, don't snitch, don't trust anybody, and it's almost like a domestic violence situation where an abusive spouse or partner has cut off their partner from the rest of the world or the rest of their loved ones. Now, it's not always that way for gang members. It just certain sets that become very violent and controlling certain parts of a city, they really have control of their subordinates. And so when that stuff starts going down, it gets crazy. So like you had Andrea Uplate on here last week, I think it was, or a few weeks ago, but she's on Failure to Stop night shift, and she and I talked about this, how gangs and those organizations are very similar to joining cults, like I was talking about earlier. Or you end up having someone who is in the gang and they have multiple charges, and so then they may want to cooperate and work off those charges. I don't really deal with a whole lot of that. When I'm looking at projects, kind of like you mentioned earlier, when we're going after hotels or we're dismantling an entire blood set, I'm looking at cooperators who willingly want to work, who willingly will provide information in order to have some type of future and to understand they joined something that they quickly, or maybe not quickly, but within a few years realized is an end game. It's only bringing negativity in their life. It's only gotten them prison charges. And those gangs grow. Like no one is really asking the question, where are gangs and how are they growing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
And the reason I say that is if you were to overlay the last 5 years of, or let's say last 3 years of violence in the major cities, your top 50 cities in the U.S., the most populated cities, if you were to overlay all of the violence that is occurring in those cities, you could overlay it with gang presence. Can they articulate and document legitimate gangs in their cities? Then overlay that with cities that have changed policies to go to more of a defund the police, more of a hands off. We're going to dismantle our gang units. We're not going to do proactive traffic stops. We're not going to work proactive patrols. We're going to cut back on our street level or street crime units. You overlay those, and that's where you'll see your most violent cities with, 400% increase in aggravated assaults, 200% increase in homicides, even traffic collisions. You can look at the traffic collisions in cities, and it's not gang related, but it is definitely when you stop doing just normal traffic stops like that officers do, you then see these collisions increase at especially major intersections and areas where you've always kind of had collisions. That's why you do traffic stops there. So the blue lights are out so people know to slow down, look before you turn right on red, don't run this stop sign, those sort of things. Those traffic collisions that were fatal in the last 2 or 3 years have skyrocketed. And it's all that you can overlay it on that. So when you talk about gangs, people are oftentimes very, very interested when I start talking about gangs because I'm from the South. My area I work is in the South. And so for me to say Bloods and Crips and Sureños, Norteños, Latin Kings, gangsters, like people are like, what, in the South? Like, yeah, the problem is in the South, the major cities have an influx from all these other areas. So instead of like having a Chicago area where you've got like gangster disciples entrenched that used to be anyway in a certain area, they've expanded obviously throughout multiple states. But, you look at the South, it's like fertile ground. So everyone is either moving here for population shifts. So someone can move here. And if they are, say, maniac Latin disciple out of Chicago, they move to the South or say they move to my city. And we don't have a real presence of maniac Latin disciples. That person, if they're motivated, can begin to recruit and start infection basically in our city. And so from the day they touch down, 12 months later, they could have 5 subordinates, 10, 12. They could make it grow. Like we have had a gang basically grow from, 5 original members to about 300 inside of about 2 years, 3 years.
Jesus.
Yes.
Well, we have
And-
we have somewhat of we have Crips and Bloods here in Wichita Falls, which is it still surprises me myself. But our biggest thing is cartels. Like just recently, and I'm saying just recently, like it's really like 8 years. We had MS-13 like really big here.
Yes, I believe it.
It just and then it escalates so much, and because of the location of a maximum security prison, also is because we also get like and a lot of people don't understand this. I forget the term that we used when I was a correctional officer, but they're town gangs, like Falls Town Gang, I forget Houston's. It's just people that are from Houston. They join a gang from another gang, and they created their own gang set.
A hybrid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's more or less like a hybrid type type deal, and and once you get it's so weird how you got like subsects of like a bigger gang because I guess someone thought they could manage a gang better than everybody else, and they had a couple of people around.
Yeah. So so let's use Bloods for example. You go back to about 1972, probably is some of the first documentation of neighborhood gangs then identifying themselves as Bloods, and that's in Los Angeles, right? So it's very heavily concentrated in Los Angeles. So from about 1972 until present day, a group of, and we'll say like younger neighborhood guys that were already into like a lot of criminal activity had these gangs that were already existing, and then they basically start banding together to kind of fight back sort of against the spread of Crips. So Crips were basically documented going back as early as 1968. So you start to see this blue and red thing going on in LA in that era, and it has spread. Well, one of the things that there's a book called Gangs in the Military that's really, really good. And I met the author, I met one of the lead sources for a gang unit in the South, and he and I talked quite a bit over the years. And so he had started tracking gangs through the military. And so what was going on is in the 70s, when guys were offered, you can either go to prison or you can join the military. Some of these guys were Bloods and Crips. They joined the military and then they get stationed throughout the US. And then wherever they get stationed, they could either continue their gang activity or begin to recruit other people. You have people, so like blood spread from.
It's even it's even worse on aircraft carriers.
Oh, I'm sure in all the military.
I've talked to because before I knew I was going to talk about gangs. I talked to a friend of mine that I up at work, and I was like, "Hey, do you?" I heard from a grapevine from another friend of mine. Were you ever on an aircraft carrier? He's like, yeah. Do you have problems with gangs? Oh, dude, you have no idea. It's Crips and Bloods are on those things constantly, and we have prostitution rings where what they did is I don't know if you had them when you're in the military, but you had like little pocket things that go around your neck, put your ID and everything in, and your chain. They're like wallets for your neck.
I got you. Yeah.
But they would show like a dime and a quarter, the women would, and that was their price. A dime that is for $100, and a quarter they would do this for $250.
Wow.
And
I didn't know.
It just because the aircraft carriers are floating cities, and they say there's like gang problems are freaking horrible on aircraft carriers.
I believe it, and mainly because if you think about let's say 1972, you don't have to worry about gangs joining the military unless they're coming out of LA area, right? Yeah. You don't have to worry about Kansas or any of the southern states or wherever, whatever, Washington State, Oregon, North Dakota, whatever. So, but now because you have so many gangs spread throughout the US, every city's got them and suburbs. When guys are joining the military, there's a very high probability that they could, or a higher probability they could already be a gang member. So I have had recruiters ask me questions about tattoos, like, is this a gang tattoo? And so you have to be able to really, really articulate and be like, that specifically is the only way you can read that tattoo is by this gang, and this is why. And so you may find like 6 or 7 identifiers within the tattoo. So like when I was talking about blood, so when someone says they are a blood gang member, or like in law enforcement, people say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Yeah, what do you got? Well, this guy's a blood. Okay, well, first off, is he a West Coast in origin blood or East Coast? So in the early 70s, it's all coming out of LA. 1993, you have a guy up in Rikers Island, he and a bunch of other guys who were fighting back against rival gang members. And they form basically the United Blood Nation in 1993, Rikers Island. It's out of New York. And when they form that, they take all these like neighborhood crews that were vicious, and they all restamped their names and became these blood sets. So from 93, 94, 95, 96, these sets begin to proliferate. So you have things like 9 Trey blood, Gangster Killer blood, Sex Money Murder blood, 1-8 Trey blood, Valentine blood, right?
Valentine blood.
Yeah. So you start seeing these sets spreading down the East Coast. So some cities may see, like for us, one of the first sets we saw were 9 Trey bloods. So we put 9 and 3 on everything, right?
Yeah.
So when we start seeing that, we're realizing, okay, when I say flying a flag, that means they're wearing a bandana on their body. So since they're bloods, oftentimes their national color is a red bandana. Since they're East Coast, or what they would call East Side, they wear it on the right side of their body. Most of the gangs we were seeing out here that were from LA were wearing it on the left side of their body. Pyrus, things like that. So our East Coast bloods, it was starting to become easier for me, because then I could say, okay, this kid's walking around, he's got a red bandana folded up in his back right pocket. He's probably an East Coast blood. And at that time, chances are he's probably 9 Trey blood. But let me see, what else can I articulate on this clothing? So then I started noticing guys would fold the bandana, or what they would call their flag, a certain way so they would show paisleys, or what they would call teardrops or blood drops, on display. So if you look at a bandana, there's the little paisley designs. You can fold it a certain way where it only shows 3 blood drops, is what they would call it. So then that bandana is folded up nice and neatly on display out of the back right pocket, and you see those 3 paisleys with those 3 blood drops. Then you can assume possibly this guy's 9 tray blood, which means then when I talk to him, I may say, am I talking to Billy, like a Billy Badass, aka for the 9 tray set? Then he may respond and be like, you already know since day one, meaning like I've been blood forever, kind of thing. So it's a way to start to read what I kind of call the signs and symptoms of an infection. So if you go to a doctor, you're like, hey, this is what I've got going on, a headache or this and this. They look at your signs or your symptoms and they're like, okay, this is the infection you may have. Gangs are the same way. So I'm not disrespecting gangs or anything like that. What I'm saying is, if you look at all of these things and articulate it, you can then say, he's wearing a red bandana. It's on the right side of his body. He's got 3 blood drops on display. He's got BBA tattooed, whatever, on his face, on his neck, or, on his fist. Okay, I know BBA means Billy Badass. Our East Coast Bloods also have 5-pointed stars. They use flames. They use blood drops. So these are some of the symbols they may use. So when you look at it that way, you can articulate that a person more than likely is a gang member based on these things, right? Their tattoos, their attire, maybe their lingo, like he said, you already know since day one. He knows what that means. So that's how I would be able to figure out what set. I say an infection because if somebody is, like, we'll keep with that 9 tray blood, and he moves to an area, right? He's already a made man, or what they would say, he's already been brought home.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been recruited, he's in. So if he has rank and wants to start recruiting in his city, he can do that. So some of these sets, and when I say set, I'm saying SET. So it's like a smaller group within the larger nation, right? So the U.S. is a nation, whatever. Kansas is a state, right? So United Blood Nation, Kansas would be the set, right? So 9 tray would be a set. It would be a smaller group within a group. So if he moves to a city and he wants to make, or he has rank in that city and he wants to make it grow, he can recruit people. So as he recruits people, certain sets may do like what they call charge dues. So they would actually charge a certain amount of money to be a member of that gang, right? So there's usually 3 ways they can get in the gang. Now, not all sets do this. So I'm some do it, some don't. And every gang kind of operates differently, even within a blood nation, even within a Crip block, or chapters within Gangster Disciple Nation or that sort of thing. But some of these gangs will offer 3 ways. You can get jumped in, you can get blessed in, or you can get sexed in. So jumped in is what most people hear about. You have a few members of the gang beat you up for a certain amount of time, and then afterwards they all kind of hug and embrace you, and a lot of times tell you, I love you, brother. Like I always take care of you. Sometimes it can be very emotional, right? Like I've seen guys cry during other events because they're like, that's my brother. I'm my brother's keeper. Like I can't let him go down. Or I can't let him go to jail, So it becomes more of a family thing that way. And it's a rite of passage. So for those people that study sociology, or you study any kind of organization or how people interact in a group setting, this is like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Right. So another example would be like in your military, and I got blood rank. I'm getting my rank beat into my collar, hitting my collarbones, and these pins are poking holes in my body, and blood's trickling down my chest. And I'm like, this is the greatest day of my life. You know what I mean? Like I just got my blood rank. I got my rank beat into my collar by multiple people in my platoon, but it's a rite of passage. We're young men, we're showing our aggression. So beat ins or jump ins are usually the easiest, or not easiest, but usually the most common way to get in. Blessed in is just when you already know somebody in your family or very close to someone who's willing to vouch for you. And so it could be like an uncle vouches for his nephew and says, I've been in the set for whatever, 10 years. I'm vouching for him. You don't need to worry about him. Like I'm standing him up. So blessed in is not always looked at within the gang as the most respected sometimes, because the guys who get jumped in are like, well, you didn't get beat up, you just got blessed in. So sometimes there can be some infighting within the gang or jealousy or whatever because of that.
Because they took the easy way in.
The way some of them will say, like, hey, this guy took the easy way. Yeah, his uncle took care of him. So in that organization, that's where your nepotism comes in. So you may have someone who gets blessed in, they make rank faster than other people who are working really hard because the uncle is looking after them. Just like an uncle who hires you at their grocery store or something may say, yeah, let's put him in for a promotion above other people, because it's nepotism. It's an organization just like anything else. The third one, sexed in, is most gangs got away from this, but this was kind of big probably 15 years ago, at least in our area. And that was when girls started wanting to join the gang. And so originally, girls were not really joining the gang, at least in our areas. A lot of the gangs were just, they weren't doing that. But then as girls were getting older, they're like, well, no, I want to be in the gang. I don't want to just be like somebody's girlfriend. Like, I want to be a card carrying member of this set. They get the offer to get jumped in, or some guys were offering sexed in. So like I said, most sets don't do this anymore, but the ones that were doing it, they would basically tell a female, you can join the set, but you got to do this. Like, basically 2 or 3 guys are gonna do, basically just whatever sexual acts they come up with. And
I've actually heard that around here.
Yeah.
They used to do that one around here. It was like 95, and I heard about it. I was like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. And you had other gangs that heard about it, and they would actually check them. Like they would check the behavior of the other gang and be like, yo, don't be doing this sexed in stuff. Like, So you would end up, could happen is like some young girl gets kind of coaxed into that. And that's how I kind of first heard about it, was taking reports from girls who were being assaulted. And they're like, yeah, I thought all I was going to do was sleep with this guy. And, to a 15 or 16-year-old, they may think that's just, we're just going to have sex and he seems nice to me or whatever. And then they're at a party, they're getting ready to do this. And then there's like 3 guys in a room and really, really bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then they realize, like, this is horrible. And these guys are not my friend. This is not my family or whatever. This is. So when that stuff was going on, other gangs were like, no, like, y'all need to know that these dudes are sexing in these girls, and really all they're doing is raping them. And like, and that's what I mean. Like, when I talk to people about gangs, every person is an individual. So I don't judge an individual based on that entire set, right? They are not always what their set is. Now, they're part of that criminal organization. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, on an individual level, if I'm trying to build rapport, talk to a gang member and try to see the good in them, and to see how are they going to be able to get out of this mess, or are they actually public enemy number one, that sort of thing. So if they are out there raping young women, then yeah, guess what? You're public enemy number one. And even your own set, even your own fellow gang members are going to provide information to get you locked up, because
sometimes they don't even provide information. Sometimes they take care of the business.
Or true, yeah. Sometimes they'll split somebody's head wide open, and then you hear later, yo, that dude was sexing in girls, or that guy is a rapist or whatever. So those really, so you basically come down to getting jumped in or blessed in. And now we're seeing a lot in the last probably 10 years, maybe, but a lot of young girls wanting to join these gang sets. And when they join, they're putting in work. They get jumped in, they carry guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to go harder than some of their male counterparts to prove themselves.
Yeah,
So,
I had the same thing. A lot, and not to say anything bad about like women and that type of stuff. I mean, women in the military, it shows that they always are a lot more harsher to deal with, because they think they have to be a badass 2 times the amount.
mm-hmm.
And I had to deal with a couple of them myself, and I don't want to say I put them in their place, because that sounds wrong. I had to go over their heads and talk to supervisors and say, hey, this feels wrong. Why does this feel wrong? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, yeah, most females in the military, because you got that whole I want to say testosterone of the guys, and they want to be just like the guys, so they think they have to, and it's even like this Napoleon complex type deal with women, where they think they have to do like 2 times harder to prove themselves, which sometimes is the case, but other times it's just you don't need to do that.
So yeah, when I was in the Army, at that time they didn't really have they didn't put females in any type of the combat arms or anything. So I don't know. I didn't never. Maybe when I went to the NCO Academy, I was around some female soldiers. I never had that experience, but
Oh no, this is just
I can say
hook they were doing.
yeah, yeah. I can say though that in at being a police officer, I've seen cops who are females who have had to prove themselves like that, and some were really hardcore. Like, look, this is the deal. I'm going out there and getting guns off of gang members, and I'm like, all right, cool. And others are like, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get guns off of gang members, but I'm going to do it a different way. I think that because of where I worked, I was very spoiled. And we've always had, for, as long as I've been a cop in this department, we've always had higher ups who were females. So the cool thing is, like, as a rookie comes in, she can look and go, okay, that chief is a female, that major is a female, that captain, that lieutenant, sergeant, SWAT sergeant, K9 sergeant. Like, I've been very, very spoiled in that sense that if you're a good cop, you're a good cop. So it's pretty cool because at least in my department, I never really experienced where someone goes above and beyond to have to necessarily prove to all these like small-minded guys that they're just as tough and hardcore. But I've had some officers tell me that, like, yeah, hey, I got to earn it every day. That's been their perspective. So I've been, like I said, I've been spoiled, man. I've worked with some really good female officers who were on gang units, who worked long-term investigations, who worked human trafficking, who were on patrol. So I did like a special assignment one time, and the person I would partner up with a lot was female, and she was really nice, very polite. When it was go time, it was go time. And she had her career goals in mind, and she accomplished them. But she would also express that there were guys that would usually like openly flirt with her, or whatever. She was married, had a kid. She's like, I don't come to work for that. I come to work to go to work. That's why I was like, cool, because we can double up and let's go. That's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not about all this other drama. So I have been spoiled in that sense. And gangs mirror society in that sense. So now the gangs are just slowly starting to catch up with, females who are joining their gang and wanting to have rank. So we've had other like females holding rank coming into in and out of our areas. And it's like, man, this is the first time we've heard this, because the areas they're coming from have been kind of more open-minded. And that kind of brings me to the sets that are more homogenous. So you have some gangs that are still aligning with only one type of race, and other gangs within last 20 years have been like, nope, open ranks, anyone of any race or background, nationality can join the gang. And the gangs that are not opening ranks like that, the long game is that they're going to lose out because they're so homogenous, and they're only recruiting from known people, that they're going to lose out as a whole, meaning in the numbers game, if that's what they're playing. And if you're running a pyramid scheme like that and you're charging dues, you want a larger nation than a smaller nation.
I just had this thought. Is it, do we have like in the United States somewhere, probably just the all female gang? I know this is totally off subject. I was like,
you probably would have, like, I mean, now we had some juvenile crews that were all female, but they were very young. They were like 14 or 15, and they were not carrying guns, but they were just going around beating up each other. I would probably say I bet somewhere you've got an all female set of something, that are putting in work and robbing people and doing. I don't know about them, but I can tell you this: a human being with the commitment of violence, can be male or female or trans or whatever, they're going to put somebody in the ground. So I don't judge people. I don't look and go, oh, well, she's a quote unquote female gang member, so therefore she's going to be softer or not. Like, a threat is a threat. So I see that the trend has been more women joining and more violence being committed, as in pulling triggers, carrying weapons on them, carrying weapons in their vehicles, not just some boyfriend says, hey, throw this in your backpack or throw this under your car seat. I mean, like guns on their person,
Okay.
recordings of them shooting people, recordings of them taking orders to go shoot people. So where people get alarmed by that, I'm like, well, that's part of society. Just like I said earlier, when I was in the Army, women were not into combat arms. You know, but now you've got women getting, for decades now, getting into different assignments they were excluded from, which is crazy because if you go back to World War II, women were serving in the OSS as spies and parachuting into France, occupied France, and building up resistance forces and executing Nazi guards and stealing their equipment and destroying bridges. And all of that now has been documented. And for whatever reason in history, the military and agencies kind of shifted away from that after World War II. And then these like kind of bans on women being in certain units. But when you go back and study the history of the OSS, which later kind of the predecessor to the CIA and to special forces, like those missions where the Jedburgh teams are jumping in. There's some great books out there on some just badass women. And I actually use some of those books when I'm teaching courses with either, officers or deputies or agents or like a police academy. I'll reference those books so that young officers know, look, women have been putting in work for decades and decades and decades. And so you read some of these books and go, man, that's crazy. Training to cut throats, you know what I mean? And like rig up demolitions.
Like Virginia Hall, the one
there you go.
A spy.
Yes.
Who the only reason why she's one-legged is because she shot her own foot
by accident. Yeah, when she was young. Yeah. So I wrote
she was
I wrote an article on Virginia Hall for Skill Set magazine several years ago. And she's a prime example of that. She was like one of the most successful spies who actually went from the OSS, was also in the SOE under Britain. You know what I mean? Like, so she worked in both agencies and deployed to France twice, was compromised once, got her way out, snuck through the Pyrenees Mountains, if I remember right, with 1 foot. Like, so she didn't tell a lot of people that she only had 1 foot. And so she had basically a wooden foot, or part of her leg.
She walked around with a limp, and that's how they.
Yeah. Her second deployment, or second time she went back into France, she would disguise herself as an older farm lady and walk with a hunch and limp. And she was running basically like a dairy farm. And the Nazi soldiers would come get like cheese and milk, and she would talk to them. And as the gang members say, she rock them to sleep, man. Here's some milk and cheese, and they would tell her where they're going. And she would see how many numbers there were, how many vehicles, and then she'd get back on what they called the typewriter, the machine, the decoding machine, type up a quick message, and boom, send it back to the decoders to figure out, okay, shit, she's got a lot of stuff going on right now in that area. Complete badass. Another one's Nancy Wake. Nancy Wake, the White Mouse.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So there's several books, and some of them are escaping me right now. But all you gotta do is Google that. Like there's one on Virginia Hall called "The Wolves at the Door," and that was their code. Like the Nazis discovered me. So when they were rolling up a lot of those Jedburgh teams, or rolling up a lot of the spies that were basically embedded in occupied France, that was their code. Was like wolves at the door, and that would be like their last transmission. They were out, and so the Nazi soldiers were using these devices that would triangulate their transmissions, the Allied spies. So they would just roll around these cities with these devices trying to trap the signals as they come out. So like Virginia Hall, Nancy Wake, like all these teams, they would have one person who could decode these messages and transmit them with this machine they had to travel with. And so they had to be really quick, send a transmission out, and then get off of that, hide it. So it was a lot of times very, very short information. But she was amazing. I say that to say, I know why a lot of that was kind of hidden from the American population, because some of those women actually said later in life, if we told our stories, if our stories got out, and we ever had World War III, then the enemy would know that women in their country could potentially be spies.
Yeah.
So it was almost like they were so arrogant at first, they would never believe that these women were training to parachute in with completely indigenous clothes. Like some of them actually had their dental work redone, fillings pulled out of their teeth, so that when they got in country into France, they would blend in case they got captured. The Nazis wouldn't be like, "This is American dental work." I guess America was known for great dental work at the time. I mean, just absolutely crazy. I know I just went off on a tangent, but man, I'm always impressed with women in combat, women in police work, women like that in World War II. Like I get motivated when anyone does some badass stuff in
Yeah.
history, and then we get to read about it and know that they were just so hardcore, man. It was just cool, man.
It's like right before we talked on air was we were talking about the giant killer, the 4'9" Green Beret.
Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah.
I mean that was awe inspiring what he did. I mean, it
Mhm.
was kind of sad what happened later in life, but but another thing is there's a lot of stuff that are just not. It's like just here recently we just found out how the Navajo, like maybe about 20 years ago. Yeah, it's not stupid,
Mhm.
but the Wind Talkers, how they
Mhm.
their language, Japanese couldn't
Yeah.
figure out the language, and that's how we got a lot of our signals through.
Mm-hmm. You want to hear something crazy when you talk about World War II and the Japanese? So when Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, you had scores and scores and scores of soldiers trying to join the army from Hawaii who were second generation. Their parents were from Japan, but they were born and raised in America. And so they wanted to join and go fight Japan because they just bombed Hawaii, right?
Mhm.
And you had a large population in California as well. Same thing, second generation. The parents were from Japan. They were born in America. America is their country. That's what they know. And they're watching the Japanese forces killing Americans, their fellow Americans. So you have these large numbers of men joining. And one of the guys ends up in a unit that's basically trapping Japanese transmissions, and he's translating them. So he grows up in America, or grew up in America, joins, and as he's listening, he remembers Pearl Harbor, right? He's listening to these transmissions, and he's figuring out that the architect for Pearl Harbor, right? This guy, and I forget his name, this admiral or whatever, this soldier's like, oh, this is the architect for the Pearl Harbor attack, and he's translating from Japanese what they're talking about on the radio, and realizes they're talking about a trip that this guy's going to have to fly in, and what coordinates he's going to have to take. And so this soldier's able to translate, get that information up the chain, and they do basically like a airstrike on that plane that admiral was traveling in and blow him out of the sky. So it's like you got this young guy who sadly has to experience Pearl Harbor, but then kind of has the satisfaction of hearing this transmission and being like, this is where this guy's going to be at this certain date and time. And then the Allies kill him.
Get
It's crazy, but
retaliation.
yeah, but there were some units, man, that they were in like the 100th Battalion, and they were known as the Purple Heart Battalion because I think like 80 or 90% of that battalion had been injured in combat. And per capita, that unit was second generation. Like I said, their parents were Japanese, they were American. When they joined, they made a whole battalion of these guys. And per capita, for the amount of time they were in World War II, they were the most decorated unit. And I cannot remember off the top of my head how many Medal of Honor recipients they had, Silver Star, Bronze Star, um, just uh, just heroism. I mean, they were just taking it to the enemy, and some of them ended up joining these units that went way behind enemy lines and listened to Japanese soldiers talking on the perimeter. And because they spoke Japanese, they knew what they were saying, and they would scoot back to the rest of their unit. They'd be like 3 or 4 man teams going all the way up to like a Japanese perimeter, listening and then sneaking back. I mean, just complete courage, man. Absolutely amazing.
Even
Um,
Texas has stuff like that to the point to where the Texas National Guard were entrapped in a
mm,
German crossfire. They couldn't
okay.
get out. No one could get in to
Hmm.
help these guys out. And I think it was a Japanese only infantry unit.
Okay. Hmm.
And they go in and save these Texans, and now and only like 12 of them survived.
Ooh, okay.
And all those 12 are honorary Texans. The governor is like, hey, you got no
Mm-hmm.
problems. What's really funny about that is I visited a friend of mine's wife. It's native Japanese, and we ended up. And I still can't believe we had this problem. Was someone was just being like a blank? I think he was like a skinhead or white supremacist or something like that.
Okay.
And he goes up and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe they're letting Japanese Jap in here." I was like, "Really?" And
Mm-hmm.
known history. And she was
Mm-hmm.
standing right next. She's like, no, we'll just go away because she's native to the
Mm-hmm.
point where she's courteous and everything to a point.
Mm-hmm.
She's a spitfire too. But I looked at him. I was like, you don't know your history about Texans and Japanese. He's like, what do you do? I was like, listen, we got 12 honorary Texans that are Japanese. What they did for us Texans.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
blood of
Mhm.
blood. I'm a certified Texan.
Okay.
I will teach you a couple of lessons.
Uh-huh.
And he just it
Mhm.
just deseculated. Can't even say the word.
De-escalated.
De-escalated the
Yeah.
situation.
Hey, yeah. When you mention a skinhead, Nazi skinhead, we just
I
Ski
heard
and I
that.
just interviewed a guy.
That was a great
What's
episode.
that?
That was a great episode.
Oh man, that guy, I read his book. So the whole thing, you heard it, but this guy wrote a book about his life, and it's called The Autobiography of a Recovering Skinhead. His name's Frank Minks, and he grew up in the Philadelphia area. But he became a Nazi skinhead, was just severely violent. And when I say violent, like when you read the book, you'll know. Or some of the episode, he goes into a little bit of it. But it took a while. And when he got reformed, he came back. I say came back, came out of prison, and now is actually working towards trying to bring people together. But man, it took me a few years. I originally reached out to him after I read the book. I wanted him to be able to come in and speak at one of our gang conferences down here, and just tried to email and try to connect, and it just never worked out. And then now, since we have the Disruptors podcast with BC and Ski, it's like we're lining up guests like that we know people want to hear their stories. You know what I mean? So we're going to bring him back. We're going to do some more stuff with him. We had a great talk. We talked afterwards, messaging back and forth. But just and he's touched on a little bit in that episode. We touched on quite a bit for the listeners. But when we bring him back, we're going to get in depth with some stuff like the history of the skinhead movement, like how it was not originally racist, how the neo-Nazi factions kind of hijacked that look, how they got young people involved, the hate core type of bands and stuff. Like we'll do a whole episode on that, like what everything means.
Yeah,
The
I
acronyms.
I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to see me the link for not the episode, but the
book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I at night. I was gonna have you on a couple of weeks ago. Well, not because of the couple of weeks ago, but I was gonna have you on like a month ago. But the new schedule that I have right now, it's just it's wreaking havoc on me right now. I've been wanting to do a lot more interviews, and because you messaged me, it's like, hey, have you had any good guys on the interview? I was like, yeah, in November and December I did. There's one guy, like we both talked to Brock. Brock was a good guy.
Yeah.
Podcast. Another guy, I think I forget his name, and it sucks that I did that, but he does let me Let me see if I can find his name. It should be Brian English. I was going to talk to him and see if, because he
Mhm.
was alcoholic, he was a cop, but
Mm.
and he was a MP in the army, and I found out something interesting just talking with him is I didn't know like Muslims had like a satanic cult too.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, yeah. He was talking. Well, he was talking about stuff that messed him up. Is
Mm.
I, I gotta either redo the episode or re-listen to the episode again because it was a good one. But he was talking about going in and I think they were trying to find a target and they found the target that because the whole village that they were at this satanic cult came in and wiped out the village and stacked all the bodies in the middle and smoked them.
Oof.
Yeah, and he had and that was one of the factors that started him on his being an alcoholic. I mean, you see something like that, and he was talking. He's like, "Man, I can still smell the flesh burning," and I was like, "Yeah, that's something that you just can't get rid of."
Yeah, yeah. And I can tell you, trying to deal with things you see is maybe a little easier if you don't go down the path of alcohol. But once alcohol kind of numbs some of that for you for a little while, then it becomes more and more and more and the
Yeah,
more.
it's any kind
Yeah.
of it's any kind of addiction because
Yeah.
I didn't have like an addiction to like alcohol. I don't have an addiction to alcohol. I don't have a addiction to like any kind of hard drugs. I mean, I do
Mm-hmm.
smoke. That's my vice. And
Mm-hmm.
anytime that I have something that's going on, and you'll see me go through like a pack really fast.
Okay.
And and it
Mhm.
and it sucks. If I have high anxiety, I smoke a lot. And
Okay. Does that calm you down though, or does it make you more anxious? Or
it,
I guess it calms you, huh?
no, it makes
Nah.
me a little bit more anxious. It's a stupid way to
Okay.
deal with shit. Just like
Well,
alcohol
no.
is.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
it's just like alcohol. But
Yeah.
if I have problems, I switch it over to I'll take long walks. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll walk 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Is like when you see things that you don't want to see anymore, you don't want to remember things, or at least you just want to calm those thoughts. We're seeing a lot of it now with police officers who are drinking more, who are on social media more, who are just ingesting the negativity of the news, negativity of maybe citizens passing by them and not saying anything or saying certain comments or whatever. It's like all this negativity. But at the root of it, I think alcohol can really, really, really mess up a lot of officers, especially later in their career when they've seen a lot of stuff and it builds up. And I say that I'm fortunate. I never started drinking because I mean there are things that I don't want to remember, but because I'm not drinking, I usually can deal with that kind of thing. But I don't know how someone who starts to lean on alcohol a lot, how um, it just exacerbates because now they're dealing with checking out each night and it just builds up and builds up and there's a movement within a lot of police departments and stuff where people are really trying to get into fasting, exercising more, going to department psychologists, that sort of thing, to where there's not a stigma. Like my guys, I say guys, I should say detectives. Um, I don't believe in like stigmas. I've got a psychology degree, so I believe in going and talking to therapists, getting this stuff out, instead of bottling it up or checking into a bottle like that and then sadly, killing yourself or just destroying your whole life where alcohol causes you to make some really bad choices.
well, sometimes it just starts out with you see someone else doing it, and that's how you click with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I could have been a full blown alcoholic because all I was doing was hanging out with people that just wanted to go out to bars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, and now, because I had a friend of mine, it's like, "Hey, you want to go out to a bar?" It's like, "No, not really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have. I mean,
Like
it,
I love hanging out in bars, but
oh,
I don't drink. But that's the thing. Like, I don't drink. So if and people will often say, "Well, one, how do you hang out in bars?" Which I'm fine, I have a good time in them. But then two, they're like, how do you not drink? But people don't understand. I never started drinking. So I don't know what it's like. I've never been drunk. I don't understand the desire because I never started. So I can hang out in a bar and have a blast as long as there's not stumbling drunks all over me. But I like hanging out in bars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Andre and I hung out in one Friday for St. Patrick's Day and listened to like every Dropkick Murphy song in the world. They've just played constant Dropkick Murphys, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I know you're pressed for time. You're about
Yeah.
about that limit. I only have one final question. Well, I wanted to have two. Like, you know,
Okay.
what kind of movie TV car that you really want?
A movie TV car like
mine's a 1967 four-door Impala black with, you know, 10 interior with the big block, not the small block. You know, I don't have plans to buy this.
Right, you know. right. Dude, that's a good question. I don't know a whole lot about cars. I can't really tell one car from the other, but I can tell you when I see a car from like that era, what I think is pretty badass. And I would probably go with the A-Team van. Only because
like I was like, I don't think he's getting. Oh, he's got the question.
No. I got the question. It's like, you know, so because some people will be like, the Coyote or whatever it was from Hardcastle and McCormick or something. I'm like, I remember what the car looks like, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of carburetor or the General Lee or what but I know that A-Team van, man. Like,
yeah.
You pop that door and you pop out with a Mini 14 with a folding stock and you shoot up a Jeep and then it cuts a flip miraculously because you shot it with these rounds, you know?
Yeah.
Or you somehow pop the door open of the van and B.A. Baracus is pulling out like a welding torch and he can make a armored tank out of like, you know, a Woody station wagon or something.
Okay.
I ain't getting on no plane, Hannibal. You know what I mean? Like I did love the A-Team, dude.
Is the good cop, bad cop thing when you're doing interrogations real or not?
No. See, I think probably someone started doing that a long time ago and maybe it worked.
I know they did it like at least in the 70s. I know that for sure.
Well, when I knock it down like that, I'm saying that when I started doing police work, which is I'm on my 20th year. So when I started, I never understood that if we were doing that type of technique or anything, it never made sense to me. Yeah. What made sense to me was like just go in and talk to someone and lay it all out there. So actually most of my interviews, I don't use another detective. I am in there by myself. I don't want another person in there.
Yeah.
Because it's going to change the dynamics. So if I'm sitting in there building rapport and all of a sudden I've got this person where they know they have to admit what they did because I'm showing them evidence. If there's another person in there, they could divert their attention and start to talk to the other person, read their body language and try to talk their way out of something or whatever. I don't know. I just never liked it. There are detectives who like doing a team approach. So in case they get tired of talking or maybe they're not building the rapport, the person can immediately switch to the other person and see if, you know, they can get them to tell the truth. Because that's the thing. People go, oh, you got to get him to confess. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to make someone confess. I'm just trying to get the truth out of the person. So I always like doing
a little bit more extra evidence that you never know what they have.
Well, I mean, sometimes someone needs to explain their actions and we could potentially have something wrong based on reading the evidence or looking at a video, but it looks like the person did it. And then they may be able to clear themselves by saying, no, I wasn't there and this is where I was, and they can prove it or whatever. But yeah, the good cop, bad cop thing. And in movies, you know, you see like, or TV shows, they're like slapping people in the back of the head and they're like, you're going to go to prison for 30 years. And I think it's because it makes it look dynamic for the TV show. But like in reality, I never did that. And I didn't threaten people. Because if I were in that seat, if I was a gang member or a drug dealer, or a shooter or whatever, I would want someone just to explain to me what they have. And then I can explain my side of it. Or if I was never even there, you and I are going to work together to actually clear your name. So if you're not there at the shooting, where were you? I don't know. Well, let's go back through your timeline. If you tell me you're at a Circle K, can we go pull video from there? Can we do whatever it is? But yeah, the good cop, bad cop, man, like TV makes interviews like look stupid. If you watch something like the first 48, you sort of kind of understand that usually there's, I don't know, I guess maybe some seasons they do a good cop, bad cop. I don't know, man.
Well, it's and another thing is a lot of people don't understand. It's like they see the interviews, they want the dramatic of the interviews, but once you coming from as a cop background, and this is just what I've heard from other like sheriff's department cops that I'm friends with here, is as soon as the guy says, "Yeah, I want a lawyer," the interview just stops.
Yeah, you do. You stop there. That's it. And so a lot of people, and it's sad. There's sometimes people are like, all you gotta do is say you want a lawyer. When sometimes there are situations where if a person will explain where they were, then they may get cleared from being part of that investigation, right? Because some people can get it wrong and think they saw somebody there and say, oh, that was so and so that I saw, and they could be wrong. And then you track down that person and they're like, F you, I want a lawyer. And you're like, well, really? You stop talking, then you're done. They want a lawyer. The drawback is you now have to go back to square one and be like, is this person the suspect? And if they are, they didn't want to talk, they wanted a lawyer. They may not even be charged at that point. It just may be that their name came up in the investigation, or their fingerprint comes back somewhere. And there's a perfect explanation while their fingerprints in the crime scene. It doesn't maybe mean that they're there at that exact time. It just means at some point they've been there. So
I've always been taught from all of the Leos from my area. There's like, dude, no matter what it is, just get a lawyer. It makes it easier on you, just in case something happens during the case that someone messed up.
Mm-hmm. I don't give anyone any legal advice, so I'm not going to say either way what to do. I'm just saying, like in the past, there have been people who, if they would have explained where they were and what they were doing, it could clear them from even their name being in the investigation. Not saying they ever got charged, but it just gets to be a headache when you're an investigator, and people don't want to clear their name or talk to you and explain, hey, you got the wrong person. I go by this street name or this alias, but there are 5 other guys in the city that go by that alias, and we're all the same age. You know what I mean? Like it could be any one of us, but if no one tells you that as an investigator, it's like you're trying to figure out why people are putting somebody's name in an investigation. But yeah, and like in TV, like when they say that and they're like, I want a lawyer, and then if some cop is like smacking him in the back of the head and then keeps talking to him, it's none of that is reality. The reality is when you go in there and talk to someone and you read them their rights, once they say, I want a lawyer or whatever, like that's it. You walk out, you don't get mad. You're not frustrated. It's like, okay, that's your right. You move on to the next part of the investigation, and whatever their status is their status, whether they're being charged for a crime or they're just being questioned or whatever it is. Yeah. But the movies make it so much more dramatic than it is. I mean, it's dramatic enough, but yeah, we're not hitting people and putting bright lights all in their face and all that stuff. Like, you just talk to people. A good investigator, anyway. And I've been fortunate. I've worked with some of the best in the country. It's like I watch detectives go in there, and it's an amazing thing to watch. There's no tricks. It's none of that. It is really good conversations, and it's really good knowing your case and laying it out there. And for the suspect, then they realize, all right, you got me. You know what I mean? Like, you laid all the cards out there, and that's just.
I've seen interviews that for like the serial killers that I'm going over, and it's just they're having. If you watch it from a side, you just think, oh, these two people are just having coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it turns out that he's getting them confessed to like everything.
Yeah. Some people want it, like with serial killers, they want to talk about it. They want to relive it. They want to be in control. Yeah. They want to show you how smart they are, especially if you're the detective. It's like, I'm going to basically show you that I'm smarter than you.
They finally have their audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And their arch nemesis. It's like, exactly. You're the detective that's coming after me, or you're the detective that's worked this case. So
What?
almost sort of like, you see those smirks like, okay, you're as good as I am because you caught me kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the whole villain monologue thing that gets them. But anyways, I kept you an extra 4 minutes.
I appreciate it. I saw it was at 4 minutes and 17 seconds right now
Yes.
over. No, I just messed around. No, I do appreciate you respecting the time. I'll always come back and talk anytime you want to.
Oh yeah. And hopefully I get my schedule set up to where we can do it again. And I love having you on. It's good conversation.
Yeah,
but thank you very much for coming on.
yeah, man. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for coming on again. That's
Yes, sir.
the Disruptor podcast, everybody. And I'm David Dickerman. Peace out.